Just imagine hurting someone that you love or a group of people that you love for a short period of time to ensure that they have a lifetime of achievement and happiness. This perfectly describes what tanking the NBA is today. And because tanking the NBA is such a popular idea, it's important that you know what it is, the teams that do it, and why they do it today. To start off, the general idea of tanking is purposely losing games or throwing away seasons at a time. In an article written on SB Nation about by Mark Deeks, tanking is described as purposely losing games. Although a lot of professionals in the better teams in the league feel that it's a dishonest way of playing the game, and there's a lot of controversy as to tanking and the whole idea of it as a whole. It's talked about how you purposely are losing those games, and then that ends up being a failure of a season. There was a study by a couple MIT students a few years back, Christopher Walters and Tyler Williams, looking more in depth to the percentages of winning percentages of the mindset of the players as a whole. And when they come to the mindset of the players, if losing, like the coaches tell them, like, hey, we're going to go out here and we're going to not win this game, it decreases your chance of winning by 14%. And a lot of people are like, well, why not 100%? That's because they know that professionally you have a lot of people who are still paying for the merchandise and paying for tickets to come see, so they're trying to keep the game still entertaining enough for the fans that are coming to watch the game. So all in all, the overall focus of it, of tanking, is purposely losing and throwing away those seasons at a time, and we'll get more into depth as to why later on. So now that you got the general idea of what tanking is, let's look at some of the teams that do the tanking. In the NBA, today a lot of teams, especially in the Western Conference, are the teams that should be tanking according to multiple websites, ESPN, CBS Sports, teams like that. I don't know if a ton of people here follow the NBA, but the Western Conference, more recently this past offseason, really got a stacked side. A lot of the good players signed with the Western Conference. There's about 3 or 4 teams that are believed to have the best shot at winning the championship, which is why, according to Forbes.com, they believe that a lot of the Western teams should start tanking because they don't have a shot at the playoffs and they don't really have any chance of winning the championship. So the teams that are tanking in general are the ones that don't have a shot at making the playoffs, because if you don't have a shot, why are you going to go out there and try? And there's the article written about specific teams like the Knicks, who people don't really know what they're doing. Hawks and Kings as well are teams that people just feel like they got nowhere, they're going nowhere with their franchise, so might as well tank. And a lot of these teams are doing this, and it upsets fans too, because you're trying to cheer on a team that you love, but they're not winning any games. So it's kind of a love-hate relationship with the fans and the teams as well. So now you guys have an idea of what tanking is, and the teams that do tank. So the biggest question of all is, well, why are you doing this? If the ultimate goal of sports is to win the championship, why are you going to go out there as a professional team and not even try to win the games? And it's a lot simpler than a lot of people realize. A lot of people think it's like this or that, but it's really just 2 big points. It's that they want to get a top 5 guy in the draft coming out of college into the professional sport. And they want to bring a lot more money into their team, as tanking does, due to statistics, prove that it can bring more money in the long run. Now, Drew McGarry wrote an article on the course about teams that are tanking, and that they try to realize, like for me, I'm a big Sixers fan, so you realize that they've gotten like 4 of the top picks in the last 5 years because they've just been awful and they just keep losing. But it's all starting to come together because teams realize that, because as opposed to people say football is different because you got 11 guys on the field for your team, so it may take 3 or 4 guys, but in the NBA you only have 5 guys on the court. So one guy can really impact an entire franchise as a whole and really show the whole turning of the franchise. So in the article he talks about how bringing in that top guy can also bring in more fans and sorts of that. And a different article on Forbes, they kind of went in depth with the study as well with Walter Williams. It's kind of like a collaboration with the 2 studies. They talked about how if you bring in a top 5 guy, that can increase your attendance on an average of 5% people per game. So they looked specifically at the Knicks because they're a team that currently is struggling. And they looked, as they played Madison Square Garden, that if they increase 5% each game, there's 82 games this season, that's an extra $25 million into the pockets of the team and the franchise as a whole, which then can translate into signing guys who may want to come over after you get to develop and start to draft the better guys on the team. So they are bringing in that money, which then can translate into making the team better, and they'll eventually become championship and playoff contenders. So once looking at all of it, it's a lot more obvious now from just seeing those numbers that teams aren't doing this just because they feel like they don't have a shot, but because in the long run it will bring in more money for the GMs and the professionals and the guys like that, who are the ones who ultimately decide. Like, they look at it and figure, well, our team, we look at our lineup, we're not gonna make the playoffs, so let's tank, let's try to bring in a guy or two, and then that'll bring in more money into the pockets as a whole. So tanking, it's a fairly new idea to the league. The studies that are done have only been recent as like 2010, because back then, in the 80s and 90s in the NBA, losing was something that was never on the players' minds, and they hated thinking the idea, but the NBA has changed a lot since then. So to sum it all up, just to think about tanking is when a team purposely loses games or even seasons at a time. The teams that are doing it are the teams that really feel like, honestly, they don't have a shot at the playoffs or even the championship for that matter, and they want to acquire the top guy in the draft or just a top 5 player, and it brings in more money and revenue for the team as a whole. So if you just think about, would you be willing to hurt someone that you love or a group of people that you love just to give them a lifetime of achievement and happiness?